Are you trying to get your feelings averse partner on the same parenting page? This can be so tricky, and there's a lot of advice out there that's kind of not very helpful. So my name's Jodie Thornton, and today I'm going to talk about what we need to have in place to make it easy to get your feelings averse partner on board. So if we think about what tends to happen is I often get clients or potential clients saying to me, I'm just going to organise a time where my partner can come along because I'd really like them to hear it too. And I will often say, are they actually keen to do this work, or is it just that you would like them to be keen to do this work? Because often we find parents, particularly the parent who is more engaged in looking at research and reading books and finding out what is the latest ideas around parenting, we find that that parent just wants the other person to understand that it could be easier, it could be better, we could be doing a better job for the kids. And the problem being that if you have a person who is wanting their children to be able to have full emotional awareness and intelligence and being able to express how they feel and tap into how they feel, commonly they will be in a romantic relationship with someone who's at the opposite end of the scale. And this isn't 100% of the time, but it's very common. And let's just have a quick look at why, is that we are biologically programmed to balance out the things that are not quite working well for us. So if we think about how often the person who's the pro-feelings person may have been told that they're too emotional, or that they're too expressive, or they're not logical, those kinds of things. So we can kind of see we're at one end of the spectrum, and then we often are attracted to somebody who's at the other end of the spectrum because we're biologically programmed to look for people that are so that our children get a variety of traits, and that our children get a variety of strengths as well. So if we think about what that looks like, is we have one parent saying it's okay for them to have feelings and they're allowed to be sad and we need to allow them to express how they're feeling, and the other parent saying this is not healthy, it is not okay, we don't carry on like that, we have this kind of tension going. And so if we're in a case where we have two parents who have the opposite ends of the spectrum, the vast majority of the time, if both parents actually want to make a change in their parenting, the vast majority of the time I will recommend that they actually see me separately. And the reason for this is that it's a different set. It's the same skills. I was about to say it's a different skill set, but it's the same skills, but there are different strengths, meaning that it's different parts of the skills that are trickier to manage. So when we're talking through what to do, I'm having a very different conversation with the pro-feelings parent as I'm having with the feelings averse parent. And so that can be tricky to manage in a session where each parent is saying that doesn't sound like it's going to work because they're coming from opposite ends of the spectrum. And then the second part of this is that there's different pieces of baggage that we have picked up from our own childhoods that put us into one camp or the other camp. And that's why it takes a different process to actually unpack those types of baggage, and a different process to really just manage how that baggage shows up for us. So generally speaking, it's not 100% of the time, but generally speaking, if we have parents at opposite ends of the scale around how we would handle feelings, our children getting to know their feelings, generally speaking, we're going to get far better results much more quickly and much more easily by dealing with that separately. Now, vast majority of the time, the feelings averse parent is not that interested in making a change. And I want to talk about why. And it relates into the same thing. If we think about that, first thing that comes up most frequently is that the pro-feelings parent wants their children to know that it's okay for them to have feelings. And the feelings averse parent, their early childhood, usually early childhood, it's not 100% of the time that it's early childhood, sometimes it's other life experiences, but somewhere along the way, they have had experiences which mean that feelings in general are genuinely stressful. just feelings are stressful things, and feelings are something that we want to avoid. Otherwise, that we will get overwhelmed, we will make poor decisions, we will not cope. So it's essentially this idea that if we just shut the feelings down, we'll be fine. Right? And so when we have one parent saying to the other parent, you need to let the children have their feelings, we've got that parent has two problems to manage. The first one being that for them, being around somebody who is having a lot of feelings is genuinely stressful on their nervous system. It is this is not just a matter of they should learn to be okay with it, or they can logically say it's okay. Their nervous system is stressed out by being around somebody who's got big feelings going on. And you will see the opposite is true in the pro-feelings parent, where being required to tell their child to shut their feelings down, whether that's directly or indirectly, that is stressful because because I'm on this side of things, so I'm on this side of things, so my nervous system struggles when anyone suggests that I need to in some way tell my children that they can't have the feelings that they're having. And it's the same stress, it's the opposite way, right? If we choose this strategy, it's stressful for this parent. If we choose that strategy, it's stressful for that parent. So that's essentially what's going on. It's physically stressful for them to be around somebody with big feelings. The second thing that's going on is that the parent who's feelings averse truly believes that in order for their child to be happy and successful, they need to learn to shut the feelings down. So it might be to set the feelings aside, or it might be to manage the feelings, it might be to control the feelings. In some way, shape or form, the feelings averse parent believes that my child will not be okay if they don't learn to shut this down. And so when you say to your partner, you need to be okay with this in order for them to be okay, you, generally speaking, they won't necessarily consciously know this is the answer, but at some level, their body is saying, if I do that, my child will suffer. And so that leaves us in a tricky spot, right? Because we've got one parent saying they need to be, their feelings are valid, they need to be heard, they need to be allowed to have the feelings that they have. And we've got another parent saying if that happens, they will suffer. And so that leaves us in what feels like a very stuck situation. What we need to do in those cases is not book a session with somebody to tell them that, they need to do it differently, because often at that point, they're like, you're just going to get somebody to tell me that what I know to be true is not true. And that's actually not what I would say to them, but that's what they believe. So they come into the session believing that they're going to be told that, feelings are important and just let them have their behavior, and that you don't want to get in the way of their personality, like those kind of extreme permission, progressive types of parenting. And that's not what I would say to them, but they come in believing that that's where we're going. And so then it becomes much more difficult for them to hear the messages. And it's also something that, if they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it, right? But that doesn't mean we're not going to shift things. We just need to do it in a different way. So the first thing we need to do is get in the habit of translating between your children and your partner. So what that means is when your child is upset, translate that into articulating the feelings and what they need underneath that. So if they're saying it's not fair that I don't get the pink cup, then the feelings averse parent will be usually saying things like, you need to be able to have a different color cup. It's not sustainable for you to have a life where you can't have a different color cup. And the child will be saying that's not fair and, getting really upset. What we want to do is, instead of coming in to say to the feelings averse partner that it's okay for them to have their feelings, instead what we want to do is help your child to articulate it. So if your child's tiny, you might just say, I wonder if it's that she, blah, 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 and then your partner can hear, actually, that makes sense. But if your child's old enough, and I kind of say no matter how old they are, they're kind of old enough to hear it, and you say, sweetie, I wonder if you're feeling that it's unfair that you can't have the pink cup because the baby always gets the bottle that she wants and you don't get to choose, right? And then you see how I'm just translating. I'm not saying she's right or wrong. I'm just translating the it's not fair or the tantrum or whatever's coming up. I'm translating it into the feeling and need that's going on. And then vice versa, your job is to translate what your partner is saying to the child. So when they say it's unrealistic for you to think that you can always have the right cup color, they're usually saying that because they can't give them the right cup color for some reason. And instead of addressing that reason, they're going to, well, it's unrealistic for you to expect that I can do it. So we want to go back to what is the reason. Is it that the cup is in the dishwasher? Is it that the cup is still in the backpack in the car from school? I can't think of a good reason, but let's think about, like, what is the reason excuse me, that your partner is not handing over the pink cup. Excuse me. So that way, once your feelings-averse partner can see that then your child actually has a genuine valid need that's going on here, it's like for fairness or to be to matter, or they want to have their choice, there's something genuine going on for them, and also that their needs matter too. Often they can then solve the problem. If they can't, you might want to say, oh, I wonder if you could do this, and then, you know, that would work for both of you, making sure that you're just coming in as a suggestion offerer. You're not the manager or, you know, the supervisor. You're just coming in with, hey, I wonder if this would work for both of you. Then that will really get them over the line. And then the more you practice that, the more parent and child get into the habit of talking about what is really the problem here, rather than staying into a place where they're stuck. Now, this brings me to the next thing that often comes up, is this idea that we want the feelings-averse partner to do it in a different way because it's better for our children in the long term. Now, if you imagine you're the feelings-averse partner and you see a lot of conversations where the problem doesn't get resolved, the child ends up having a tantrum, the child speaks disrespectfully, there's other things that we might be thinking, you know, that's reasonable and it makes sense that that's happening, the feelings-averse partner will be thinking, this is just reinforcing bad habits. This is just reinforcing this idea that emotions are out of control and, you know, that we accept behavior that is not considerate of other people. And when we look at what the research says about what kids need, when we look at what the experts say about what is helpful for children in the long term, we know that what we're doing is further ahead than what most of us grew up with. The problem is that when it's not actually to the point of, in inverted commas, working, then our feelings-averse partner just looks at it and goes, well, that isn't better than what I grew up with. Like, this is not better, right? And so what they're thinking is, this is going to be worse for my child than what I grew up with, and so that's problematic for me. And so in that case, before we get to the place where we want to actually talk to your partner about, okay, can we shift these things? And I'm talking there about having serious conversations rather than just, you know, we might have small conversations or suggestions here and there. But if we want to talk to our partners about, like, this is not okay, this is not working for our child, can we shift things in this way? That's not going to work very well if the way you're parenting isn't solving the problems and having minimal out of control feelings. And some people would say out of control feelings are just par for the course, but that's not my view. So there's a spectrum, right? There's shutting feelings down and making them not okay and making a child feel invalidated. And then we have allowing the feelings to just be out of control and difficult. And allowing the feelings, in my view, is better than shutting the feelings down, because then our child doesn't start to question their own reality. They don't feel invalidated. They can feel heard even though their feelings are unresolved and out of control. And in my view, that is more helpful, but it's not where I recommend we stop. where we want to get to is a place where our children can process their feelings and use them to help them make decisions. So we're not just saying a tantrum because you're not getting your way is an appropriate way of handling things. What we are saying is that if they're having tantrums, then we know something's not right and we need to look at what the feelings are telling us and we need to get better at solving the problems. So that being the case, if you're all the way to the end of the spectrum where you can solve problems more frequently, the feelings don't get out of control very often, and when they do, you know how to help your child move through that reasonably quickly, that's a stage where the feelings-averse partner can go, well, hang on a second, that's actually working pretty well. And that allows them to feel like moving in this direction is safe. Now, how do we get to that place? It's quite a process. We need our child to develop their own emotional awareness. We need our child to, and when I say emotional awareness, I'm talking about the things like noticing that I'm going to have an angry reaction because my brother took my train, right? Noticing before the angry reaction comes out, being aware of that. So that emotional awareness. The second thing we want our child to be able to do is to articulate their feelings and to express what is really going on for them, what's important to them about the situation, which takes practice and support to get there. Then the third thing is actually we need to be able to find solutions that work, whether it's between siblings, whether it's between the parents and the kids. We need to be able to find solutions that take account of everyone's feelings and needs. And that's quite a process. Like, that's a big thing to move through for most people. These are not skills that many of us grew up with, and they're definitely not the skills that are being taught in schools and even early childhood centres. Some of the most progressive education settings, they talk about validating feelings, but they don't talk about processing and articulating. So it might be something like, you'll see a lot of education settings talk about, well, that's not fair, or that's not being a good friend, in a way that basically says there's a way to be and there's a way that's not okay, when in reality we're all so individual. We want to be honouring who we are as individuals and who our friends and the people close to us are as individuals. So that's what I would say. So that being the case, we haven't grown up with these skills. It's a process to go through to get through this. For most people that work with me on an ongoing basis, for most of them, I will say, let's just focus on what's happening between you and the children until we get to that place, and then we'll talk about how to support your partner. Sometimes we do a little bit of work around talking to the partner if things come up, and sometimes we'll also include the partner in the sessions, but often we're doing just parent and child work until we are at that stage where things are, in inverted commas, working. So then, if we get all of that happening, so we're doing the translating, we are now parenting in a way that feels like it's working, that solutions are easy to find, there's not many out of control feelings, and when there are, we know how to help them move through that. Then if we talk about what does it mean to talk to our partner about shifting their parenting? And really, what we need to be doing is finding a way for our partner to be able to deal with what's important to them as well. So the feelings-averse partner or parent will often have an experience that their needs are not valid, right? And you'll see this in ways where they will always have a logical reason why their needs are okay or their needs should take precedence, but they don't have an inherent sense that their needs are valid. So you'll often see a feelings-averse partner be over-giving to a child in ways that they think are important but are not necessarily important to the child, and then getting frustrated when things don't work out the way they want them to. You'll also see them not actually articulating to their child that they need space or that they need quiet or whatever it is that they need just doesn't feel valid. And so part of the conversation with talking to the other parent is being able to notice when you're talking about what your child needs, noticing that if your feelings averse partner sees that as, well, that means I'm not going to get what I need, then that's not going to work for them. Right? And so we've got here this piece around helping your feelings averse partner to see that this is not about sacrificing your needs as a parent, but it's about getting you and your child to be problem-solving teams, right? To work out a way that works for them. And some of this is going to be including helping your partner's feelings to be validated. And often when I say, can you validate your partner's feelings around this? Often the person who's speaking to me will say, but the child, right? Because we are so focused on our children are tiny, we need to raise them in a way that's good for them. And that's because what we have been raised with as a culture, not necessarily, like for many of us, it is our parents, but it's not just our parents. It's the school system, it's the workplace, it's everywhere, right? How we've been educated to think about things is it's whose turn is it to sacrifice? Who is logically in the right here, and that person gets what they need and everybody else just needs to accept it's not your day today. And so when our partner says, I have big feelings about what's going on, they won't use those words, but you will know what they're saying. Our reaction is often, but if your feelings are valid, then I have to sacrifice my child's needs. And that's where the key is. And so if we think about what does it take to be able to do that, you need confidence that you can get your child's needs met, even if your partner does not do things in the way that you would like. How do you get that? In the last step, when we were talking about getting to a place where things are working, that's where you get that confidence that you can always find a way to either get your child's needs met or help them to process when it doesn't happen. The second part is having a real strong sense that in any given situation, vast majority of the time we actually can find a solution that works for everybody. We're just not in the practice of it. And where do you get that confidence? The previous step, getting to things to a place where they're working. And then the third part is making sure that any baggage that you have is not getting in the way of being really present and validating of your partner. And again, where do you get that confidence? From noticing what comes up when you truly hold space for your child in the previous step. Does it bring up stuff for you? Does it bring up things from your childhood? Does it bring up circumstances that you really wish had changed? Does it bring up trauma? Like there's all these things that can come up. Those things that will come up when you're trying to hold space for your partner, almost all of it will come up when you're holding space for your child. So the more we do in that previous step around making sure that your child's feelings and needs are validated, they have awareness, they can articulate it, and you're practicing solving problems, the more solid you are in that stage, the easier and more ready you are to have these conversations with your partner. So that all being the case, if this is something that you would like to work on, I highly recommend if this is a time where you don't have the space or energy or finances to be able to work with somebody, stick in that first step of translating. So every time you have a difficulty where you would like your partner to change how they're parenting, slip into the translator role. How can you translate what your child feels and what's really going on for them into words that make sense for your partner? And how can you translate what your partner is trying to communicate to your child so that both your partner and your child feel validated and they're supported to be able to solve the problems together? And that's so valuable, and you can get so much mileage out of just doing that. And if you find that particularly hard, you could book a session with me, but you can just, if you keep practicing that, you will go so far in helping your feelings averse partner to get towards the same page with you. But if this is a big priority for you, then I highly recommend booking a package with me. So generally speaking, we would do a 6-month package where we focus on building your child's emotional awareness and their ability to articulate what they need. building your capacity between the two of you to solve the problems, to figure out what's going to work for you and your child, or what's going to work for your child and their sibling. And as we need to, we're going to deal with any baggage that you have. So that might be things from your own upbringing, or it might be cultural messages that are making it feel like you can't progress in towards the kind of parent that you want to be. And we'll just deal with that. I take the approach that we don't want to uproot every issue that you've ever had. What we want to do is focus on which pieces of your baggage are getting in the way of you parenting the way you want to parent. And as we just process those pieces of baggage, things get easier and much more confident you feel that you can actually make the changes in your parenting that you want. And then finally, then we can talk about how do we have those conversations with your partner that are constructive and supportive of your partner becoming the parent that they want to be, that is also on the same page with you around your child's, the emotional side of parenting your child. If this is something you'd like to do, send me an email, jody@jodythornton.com. Let me know where you're up to, what your situation is, and we can book a time to have a conversation. Thanks so much for watching.